We are here today with great advocates in the state Senate as well as great advocates in the state House for farming and agriculture throughout our state. They've always been strong advocates for them. We're also joined, most importantly, by the men and women behind me that make up the agricultural community here in Connecticut. And when you think about what is most essential to our state, I often go to my district and we talk about open space, and many farmers remind me we don't have open space in this state if not for agriculture, without for farming. They make that possible. We talk about the food that's get delivered to our table and we take for granted when we go into the store and purchase it. It comes from all of them behind us. They are the backbone of this country. They're the backbone of this state. And I think it's important to note that because continuously I hear from every constituent, even outside the farming community, that this state has gotten way too unaffordable. We're the third highest in taxes, first highest dependent on property taxes, third highest electricity rates. And instead, we have a governor and a legislature, frankly, that doesn't seem to care. They don't grasp any of these things. And continuously, it is the Republicans in the Senate and the House that are the ones calling the alarm that we have to fight for our constituents to ensure that they could live here and to ensure that their kids can grow up here and their grandkids can grow up here in a prosperous state and an affordable state. And now we're seeing what's going on by the OPM's actions, the governor's actions through OPM, in raising property tax rates for our farmers behind us by 300% in some cases. Think about that for a second. Think about going and paying your property tax bill and seeing it go up 300%. What is that saying to the farming community? I see pictures of the governor out in farming, visiting tours, and that's great. But if you're going to raise the property taxes on some farmers by triple, what does that really say to them? And so we're here today to call on OPM and the governor's office to stand up, to do what is right, and to put a moratorium on these property taxes so we can continue to have thriving farming in our communities. It's what's right and it's what needs to be done. I'm here today with Senator Summers, who I'm going to introduce, the strongest advocate, or one of the strongest, with Senator Gordon, fighting for our farmers in their districts and throughout our state. So Senator Summers, please.
Thanks. So good morning, everyone. I have to say that I am saddened to have to be here today, and I'm saddened that we actually have to have a press conference to have the conversation about what's happening, because there's no one who works harder in the state of Connecticut than the hardworking farmer. These are men and women who rise before dawn, they work long after dark, they take on enormous risk and put food on our tables. They don't control the weather, they don't control the markets, and right now they don't even control their futures. PA 490 was created to do one thing: to preserve farmland by taxing land based on how it is being used on the farm. Not what it might be worth someday, not what it could be worth someday, but what it is worth today, working farmland. That was a promise made to Connecticut farmers. And today, right now, in Connecticut, that promise is being broken. Across the state, farmers are being hit with staggering and indefensible increases in farmland assessments, resulting in crushing tax increases that no working farm can absorb. These are not small corrections or routine adjustments. We are seeing assessments rise from 560% to at one time 2,300% increases. While OPM has made some minor small adjustments downward, the system is flawed. No farm can survive this, no small business can live with this, and no policy producing these results can say that it's actually trying to preserve farmland. This will affect every farm in Connecticut. Farms right now are being hit that are going through revaluations in their local municipality. Revaluations move town by town, but PA 490 is across the board in the state, and let me tell you that every single farm will be exposed to this. This couldn't be happening at a worse time for farms. Farmers are already being crushed by skyrocketing costs: fuel, feed, fertilizer, equipment, labor, insurance, highway use tax. Many farms are already losing money. They are operating at a loss. They're held together by debt, by family labor, and by sheer Yankee determination. For many of them, these assessments hikes are not just another challenge that they have to overcome. It is the straw that will break their backs. So what do we say to the next generation farmer? Do we say to the young person coming back to the family farm, to the son or the daughter hoping to continue a multi-generational business? How do we tell them that the state of Connecticut supports agriculture while handing them a tax bill that makes it impossible to continue the family tradition? Because this isn't just about land. This is about legacy. This is about Connecticut's legacy. So what is driving this crisis? A survey, a formula, a spreadsheet. Data that does not reflect the reality of what it's like to work on a farm. It ignores soil quality, wetlands, flood-prone fields. It ignores limited growing season. It ignores bartering. It ignores if you're not leasing your land. This is not taxing land that's being used. This is taxation by spreadsheet. It turns PA 490 on its head. And let me say this as plainly as I can. If you're against farmers, you have no business being in this building. This legislature has a responsibility to protect our farmers and support them however we can, especially the next generation trying to keep the family farms alive. Because this goes far beyond the farm gate. It affects where our food comes from and what we eat. People care deeply about where their food comes from, knowing their food is safe, it's local, it's traceable, and it's Connecticut grown. We proudly say here, and there's stamps on food, Connecticut grown. But if we do nothing, if we stand down, we risk turning into that grown somewhere else. It also threatens our ecotourism, our agrotourism, farm stands, pick your own, vineyards, dairies, the beautiful rural landscapes that we all enjoy here. They will disappear as that economy disappears. And the consequences of implementing this system are all too predictable. Farms will have to sell. Fields will become out of production. Development will explode. And once again, farmland will be gone. And when it's gone forever. If we allow PA 490 to become the very thing it was designed to prevent, a pipeline from working farms to development. So we cannot stand here and claim we support agriculture, we support food security, we support open space, we support climate resilience and ecotourism while quietly taxing farmers out of existence. That's why we're calling for immediate action. We are calling for a moratorium on these increased farmland assessments and a direct legislative action to fix PA 490, to make sure farmers are at the table when we reevaluate and look at assessments, to make sure that we restore the original intent so farmland is once again taxed on how it's actually being used, not on flawed, detached data. There's also, just so everyone knows, a live petition online under Connect the PA 490 land use tax increases at savectland.org. It went up today at 7 a.m. We already have hundreds of signatures. So I think it's very important that people recognize that this is not asking for special treatment. This is keeping a promise. This is protecting family traditions, and this is ensuring that the next generation of Connecticut farmers actually have a future here in Connecticut. If this policy survives as written, our farms will not. PA 490 was meant to preserve farmland, not erase it. And now it's my honor to introduce some of the most important speakers that we have here today, the farmers. The first farmer you're going to hear from is Kim. She's from the 100-acre farm in North Stonington. Thank you. Kim?
Thank you. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, everyone who's here today. This isn't a place where farmers are used to being, so forgive us if we're not prepared to be in this format speaking to you today. We reached out to Heather and the powers that be in our community when we first got our land reassessment and realized that for my farm personally, we raise cattle in North Stonington, and for my farm personally, our taxes would go up $16,000 a year. That's just on our farmland. That doesn't include our home. Because we raise cattle, and these are statistics that are easy to find. So how, again, the powers that be at DOAG, at OPM, and the appraisal, which was done by the lending institution that lends to these farmers, Farm Credit East, the vice president of that is Nick Celentano, was the one who actually did the appraisal. I find that really interesting, that the lending institution for farms was the one that did the appraisal. on these values. But when we first got our bill, we were shocked. We, of course, ran down to the town, met with our first selectman who's here today, Bob Carlson, and who's been a big supporter of the farms. We first moved into town, we were told, hey, this is a farm town. And so thank goodness for towns like North Stonington that do support their farms, that believe in their farms. And I think during this process, we've managed to connect with a lot of farmers throughout the state of Connecticut. Myself and Shannon from the Stead Farm is on the complete opposite end of the state, started a Facebook page because we knew that's where we could effectively get to the most people. It's called CTPA 490 Farming Community. In a month's time, we have about 560 followers and people who are providing their stories, reaching out to us. So it's a growing coalition of farmers throughout the state. One thing that I think I find most shocking, like I said, that DOAG seems to be oblivious to is the costs of production, the costs of farming. In cattle, and I'm sure it's reflected in dairy as well, the USDA reports that since 2020, the cost of production has gone up 170%. Cattle sales, on the other hand, or beef sales, on the other hand, have only gone up 10%. So clearly, the cost of production and now the cost of taxes is completely outpacing farming to the point that it's completely unsustainable. I question why, of all categories, while all categories for the most part went up, pasture F, which is considered historically and throughout the United States, is one of the lowest priced pieces of land. Here in the state of Connecticut, it's rocky, it's untillable. In many cases, it's unseatable by mechanical means because it's rocks, so it'll break your equipment. That means that the only thing you can do with that land is to put sheep or goats or cattle. All of those types of ranching and farming are extremely expensive because you've got increases in feed prices, increases in purchasing weanlings, which have, as some of you might know, have gone up dramatically. Years ago, you could buy a 6-month-old cow for about $500. Today, you're spending upward between $1,500 and $2,500 for a 6-month-old. So, and then you've got to feed that animal. So those are the costs that a lot of people are not aware of, and it seems to be that our Department of Agriculture seems to be conveniently unaware of as well. So this is why this has become the issue that it is for us today. It's simply, these aren't costs that farmers can take on when we're already functioning at a deficit.
Thank you so much. And I'll just let everyone know from the media that the farmers will stick around after so you can ask them more detailed questions. I'm sure they'd be happy to chat with you. The next farmers that I'd like to introduce are Emily and Ben Lewis from North Stonington that actually own the oldest farm in North Stonington. Emily, Ben, come on up.
Thank you again for having us. I know you've heard the numbers. Kim spoke a great deal about the land and thing. I want to talk about the legacy. When you pull up to our farm, the sign says 1791. We don't take that lightly. I stand with my 8th generation son and wonder what I'm handing him. I'm already handing him a ton of debt from other gasoline prices, building prices, cattle prices, and now I can't even think about what would happen if our taxes go up 200% is what we're looking at. We own 700 acres in North Stonington. Year by year, we've tried to add to that total, and while it's getting harder to add to that total, we've looked out to lease to other properties. Now I'm asking someone who I lease from to pay a huge tax bill. So who do you think they're giving their land to? Me as a farmer or development something. There's so many unanswered questions right now for farmers that it makes me nervous for the next generation. For years, he played with his plastic tractors on our kitchen table, and now it's his turn to take over. And I'm just asking that we look at this further so that we create in Connecticut a spot that young farmers have the ability to take over, to create, to continue on what so many have already done for so many years.
Great job.
Thanks, Ben. Do you want to say something?
Like my mom said, I played with tractors for a long time, but yeah, I thought always going into it I would be the one to take it over, but now more and more that I look into it, is there even going to be anything for me to take over? Is there going to be anything for me to go about, anything for me to like? And my whole life I've always been a farmer. That's all I know how to do. I don't know how to weld. I don't know how to be a plumber. So farming's just the only way I know by. And that's
Thank
it.
you. Thank you. Thank you. And I do believe that earlier Emily and Ben had shared if this continues to go forward, they will not be able to continue, which is tragic. The next person I want to introduce is the Plainfield Agricultural Commission Chair, Jenny Kapsakavich, who's also a farmer.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to come here today. So as the chair of the Ag Commission, I have been doing that since its inception in 2015. So my comments are both personal and community driven. I have met farmers today that I've never met before, but we all have common ground and we all understand the same struggles that we're going through, even though we have never crossed paths until today. I think it's important first to note how this data was collected and driven. I'm 48 years old, I'm decently tech savvy, but I'm incredibly busy. I did not know a survey had been sent out. I did not participate. I reached out to other farmers in my community. They did not know. I think that's a reality of, it's a symptom of our society that we're trying to do things easier or more effective. But when you think about the life of a farmer, which is what I'm going to talk about, you know, we've heard about some numbers, we've heard about legacy, but I think it's important that you hear our stories because we all have one. We don't have time to make sure we are monitoring for a small postcard that might have been inside another mailer. So I think it's important to remember how this data was collected. So I'm going to give you a little bit of story about myself. I did prepare a statement because I can get winded. I'm certainly an advocate for agriculture. My husband and I own Stonehill Farm. It is a pasture-based, grass-fed operation in Plainfield. My husband was the fourth generation to milk dairy cattle on his family's farm. He was not in succession for his farm, and so we were forced, in order to continue pursuing agriculture, to acquire land ourselves. So almost 25 years ago, we secured 68 acres that we had to purchase. It was undeveloped farmland, which meant it had nothing on it. No home, no infrastructure for animals. So we had to build that from the ground up. I will tell you that for us, and for many, entry into farming has a ton of barriers. But I'm gonna focus on the biggest one for us, which was land acquisition. And it continues to be at the forefront. It drives why my husband and I have to have full-time off-farm careers. We can't afford to farm the land we're on without supplemental income. A lot of farmers are faced with this reality. We care deeply about the land we steward, the animals in our care, and the countless clients who rely on our products. We exclusively graze our herd of cattle, and in addition to our own 68 acres, we also lease 25 additional acres for agriculture production. All 93 acres are enrolled in the PA 490 program. This current use value is critical to our farming success. We already operate on tight farming margins. This increased tax burden not only has implications for our own property, but for those that we lease. I contacted our landlords. They too didn't know this was happening, and discussed these higher increases. One aging landlord is unsure that they want to continue to retain the property at an increased value. This is greatly concerning to think that landowners and farmers may be forced to sell their properties. Not only will our farm not have access to these vital acres, but they may be permanently converted into development. If they decide not to sell, we are unsure we will be able to afford an increased lease payment. Our products are already sold at a cost that reflects our inputs and our labor. It would be unrealistic to think our clients, you all in this room, could continue to support buying from us if we were required to embed those increases in our product costs. According to the Farms Under Threat report published by American Farmland Trust, if Connecticut continues to sell farms for development, Connecticut will lose an estimated 55,000 acres of farmland by 2040 to development. Not 1 acre of developed farmland has ever been converted back. This report did not take into consideration an accelerated pathway of taxing farms to extinction. These land values are simply unrealistic and highlight that inflation to land values has no limit. This clearly can happen again. What will these values look like in 5, 10, 15 years? This disregard to understanding and supporting how and where food comes from is in direct contrast to the grown local movement Connecticut claims to promote. Farmers, like myself and those behind me, continue to show up, grow local food, and support our local economy. Our story is not unique. It represents one of many that are equally impacted. Connecticut's food, fiber, and forest products rely exclusively on the land we farm. I challenge leaders in Connecticut to do better. The future of agriculture depends on the decisions in your control.
Now it's my honor to introduce the first selectman of North Stonington, Bob Carlson.
Thank you, and I'll keep this short because it's really a day to hear from the farmers. But as the first selectman of a town that's a right-to-farm town, a town that was built on the back and hard work of farmers, I felt I needed to come today and speak on their behalf. Since November, when this report first came out, I have had a steady stream of people coming into my office, Kim emailing me, Emily calling me, and saying, what are we going to do about this? Well, the first thing I did is I reached out to Senator Heather Summers, who's actually taken the lead. I can't thank her enough for doing this because I could not have done this on my own. We are a town that is going through reval this year. So if you go through reval and then you see these increased values on this farm property, it's not sustainable for our farmers. We became our own town in 1807. We used to be part of Stonington. I guess I could call Stonington and say, if we lose our farms, are you willing to take us back? Because we can't sustain our town we're a farm town, and we need to stay a farm town. And I thank you for having me today. I thank you for coming up, our farmers for coming up, and I hope that we do the right thing. Thank you.
I will now going to introduce, it's my honor to introduce Senator Ryan Fazio.
Thank you, Senator Summers. Thank you for your leadership on this issue. Thank you to all of our great legislative leaders from Northwestern and Eastern Connecticut who represent so many of our farmers. Thank you, Bob, and most importantly, thank you to our farmers for speaking out. Your voice resonates across the state, and I think it will make a difference in stopping this new policy. Kim, you mentioned that it's not customary or it might not feel comfortable for a farmer to be in the state capitol building, but I assure you there's a lot of manure here too, permeating the building. And this policy is one of the best examples of that. I actually spent 6 years in the agriculture industry, processing grains, selling distillers' grains. And farmers have been hurting for well over a decade all across this country. Farmers are sophisticated. They understand that we can't control global commodities prices or feed margins or anything like that. But I think they also intuitively understand we can control the policies here at the local and state level. Farming is the backbone of our economy. It feeds our families. And the least that they could ask for in exchange is a predictable and a stable state tax policy that doesn't take farms out of commission here in the state of Connecticut. We need to go back to the drawing board, freeze this policy as it was in the past in order to ensure that there is a limited and predictable tax burden on our farmers. This is not acceptable that farmers could be facing tens of thousands of dollars in increased property tax bills without proper notice, without proper process and consultation. Let's go back to the drawing board, bring the policy back to where it was before for starters, and always protect and consult our farmers in our state policy.
Great, thank you. I'm now going to introduce a few reps. We're going to hear from Representative Anderson, Representative Dubitsky, and then we're going to follow it up with Senator Gordon.
Good morning. I'm Representative Mark Anderson, Connecticut's 62nd District. I represent Barkhamsted, which includes Stead Farm, which was mentioned earlier and part of the leadership and of this movement, as well as Granby, Heartland, and New Hartford. In this district and across our state, we value our farms and the people who work them. These farms are threatened like never before by exorbitant tax assessments, which will drive up the cost of farming. The farmers here at the Capitol today, and those who couldn't be, are united by the same concern. And yes, many are carrying what feel like virtual pitchforks right now. I grew up in a farmhouse built in 1844. It wasn't officially a farm, but we lived like one. We had apple, peach, and pear trees, a few pigs, a dozen chickens, and a large garden. We raised and grew much of our own food, and we valued it deeply. As a teenager, my first real job was as a farmhand on a large farm next door, picking apples in the fall, pruning the trees in the winter, burning wild blueberry fields in the spring, and harvesting berries in the summer, often coming home with very blue teeth. I still drive by that childhood home time to time. Sadly, the farm next door is gone. All the apple trees are cut down to make room for a solar development. PA 490 exists to protect farmland from being lost to development, but with the recommended 2025 assessments, it's failing at its core purpose. So here's the call to action. First, the Department of Agriculture must again revisit and revise these numbers. Second, if necessary, the legislator must return to the statute and provide clear direction to both OPM and DOAG on how these assessments are to be calculated, so mistakes like this are not repeated. If we truly value Connecticut-grown agriculture, then we must get this right. The future of our farms depends on it.
Good morning. I know this might come as a surprise to some of you, but food does not come from little plastic packages at the grocery store. It comes from the dirt. It comes from the hard work in places like Plainfield, North Stonington, and Enfield, and Brooklyn, and Durham, and every single town in this state where farmers work their butts off to make sure that you can eat. Now, we would have this room filled with farmers, but right now they're all out in the fields making food for you. PA 490 was designed to protect farmland, to prevent farmland from being converted into some non-farming use because of overtaxation. And that has worked for a long time. It's worked pretty well. We have relied on OPM and the executive branch over the years to set reasonable assessment values for farmland in this state. Somehow this year, that went off the rails. And it's clear now that we don't seem to be able to trust them anymore to set those values. So I know a lot of us are imploring OPM and the governor's office and the executive branch to take another look at the values that they've set. Well, you know, certainly they should do that. If they don't do that, you know, we have legislative session starting in just a couple of weeks. We're going to have to look at how those values are set, because clearly what has come out this year is totally unrealistic and completely obliterates the purpose of PA 490 to prevent the forced conversion of farmland to a non-farm use. Now, farmers are not just getting a free ride on this stuff. You know, many people don't know that when a farm applies for PA 490 categorization, they get a lien on their property. There is a lien on the land records of the farm that if they stop farming for any reason, they have to pay a massive excise tax. So it's not like we're just giving away money to farmers. Farmers are doing a job that most of us in the state don't want to do and don't want to work that hard. But we're also putting a burden on their land at the same time. And it is a symbiotic relationship. We give to them, they feed us. And we have to make sure that whatever assessment finally comes down is something that satisfies the purpose of PA 490, which for those of you watching at home is actually Connecticut General Statutes 12-107. We need to make sure that the assessments that come down don't put our farmers out of business because we all like to eat.
Hi, everybody. I am State Representative Irene Haynes, and I grew up in West Hartford, and my husband grew up in Meriden, but we got married and moved to East Haddam, and that's the town that I represent, along with East Hampton, a little bit of Salem. Huge farming community. And I will say that we bought land behind our house, and we became farmers. We actually grew beef. It was amazing. It was an amazing experience. My kids, they got up first thing in the morning, and they fed those calves, and then they had to clean up after them when they come home from school. It's an amazing opportunity for anybody and any families out there to become farmers, and we can do that in the state of Connecticut. But if we keep up this garbage, guess what? We're not going to have the farms that we have. We're not going to have the opportunities, and it's going to get too costly. I know probably 10 years ago we stopped doing beef, but the fact that it's what it's cost now to do beef now, it's incredible. We cannot tax these people out of their livelihood and their legacies and the opportunity that we have Connecticut-grown beef, vegetables, fruit. We need to fix this, and I hope we fix this next session. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm State Senator Jeff Gordon. I represent 13 towns in Northeast Connecticut, and every single one of my towns has a lot of farmers, a lot of farming community. And I live in Woodstock, right next to a farm, and I always joke that Woodstock being an ag community, there's probably more cows than people in my town. But I also know PA 490 very well, land use very well, and agriculture very well, because before I was a senator, I was chairman of planning and zoning in Woodstock. And we're a very ag-friendly community, strongly support PA 490, and very much our farming community. And we're here today, all of us, to support farmers. We know there's an affordability crisis in Connecticut. I don't need to cite the statistics on that. Any statistic shows that that crisis is not getting better, it's getting worse. And now with this PA 490 mess, it is making things even more unaffordable for farmers at a worse time for them. And when we talk about farmers operating their businesses on margin, leveraging a lot of debt, rolling over debt from year to year, basically using their land as their asset, anything that makes things worse for them can literally drive them out of business. And we've heard that once land is developed, it won't go back to agriculture. Absolutely. We can see that across this state over the decades of farms that have been lost or that just couldn't be sustained generation to generation. And then, of course, the land gets for development because you can make a lot of money when you sell it for development. But when we lose the farms, we lose not just the local food, and a lot of us talk about support local. That's really something we need to do. But we lose a lot of local jobs, and we lose what the Connecticut Department of Agriculture cites every year, which is a huge economic benefit for our state. We can't lose any of that because we'll never get it back. So what we really need to do is address this as a true emergency. We've gone into special sessions last year for things that weren't emergencies. This really meets the definition of it. The legislature is going to have to act. We need the executive branch of government to join us in that. Institute a moratorium, stop this right now. That's a good first step. And then we need to make certain that we're giving a fair deal to the farmers. They're not asking for anything special. They're asking to be treated fairly. We should be able to do that. And we need to make certain that literally they have a seat at the table when these types of decisions are being made. And when these decisions are made, wouldn't we want farmers there? This is their livelihood. They understand this. They can be providing us the input we need here in this building to be making these types of decisions. So when we say we need to act now, we need to act now. And I'm proud to stand here with my colleagues and farmers and all the farmers I represent in my 13 towns to see what we can do to move this forward. But we have to do something now. We just can't wait and decide later. This is where the rubber meets the road. Our farmers need the help right now. We can do that, and then we can make things better for them moving forward. And remember, when we help our farmers, we help our communities, and we help our state. And isn't that what we want to do moving forward? That's our job as legislators and as local officials, and that's what we're here today to support and to drive home. And let's get this done now and moving forward. Thank you.
So it's really very simple. It's not lost on me that this governor and this Democratic majority supported statewide zoning, which would implement apartment buildings all across this state. Because if this goes through, that's what's going to happen, and it's not lost on me that that's what they want. The other thing that's not lost on me is how out of touch this state government is with the regular, hardworking, middle-class people of this state. Because this is a great example of that. Your taxes are going up 300% if you're a farmer. And if this was a problem with lawyers, I can guarantee you one phone call would be made and it would be over in this building. If this is a problem with doctors, as much as I support the doctors, one phone call would be made and it would be gone. If this is a problem with a big, well-connected state bureaucratic union, one phone call would be made to the governor's office, this problem would be gone. But no, it's a problem with farmers who are out in the field all day providing us the food we need to live. And all of a sudden, it's not just a problem anymore. That is how out of touch this governor and how out of touch this government is. This needs to get fixed. You're hearing from people here talking about the fact they are 9 generations in this business. Their farm opened shortly after the inception of this country, and they're going to shut down because of this tax being implemented. All it takes, Governor, is one phone call. Make the phone call today and stop this from going forward now, period. So with that said, we'll open up to any questions.